Hello, friends. About 99% of friends who watch my videos are not subscribed, and I would be very happy if you did. Also, don't forget to press the like button and leave your comments. Your interaction makes the content reach everyone and helps the channel grow. Also, let me know in the comments from which country you are watching the video. You ever been so deep in the middle of nowhere that even your own thoughts start sounding like a stranger talking back to you? That's how it felt the night I drove down Route 6 through Nevada. Mile after mile of blacktop stretching out, under a sky so dark it swallowed my headlights whole. I'd been trucking for over 20 years, seen all kinds of strange things from coast to coast, but what happened out there on that stretch of road still keeps me from sleeping easy. I ain't telling this story to scare nobody, but if you ever find yourself cruising down a desolate highway in the dead of night, you might want to remember what I'm about to say. It started just past midnight. I'd picked up a load in Sacramento, heading east to Denver, and figured I'd drive through the night to make up for time lost sitting around the yard. I had a fresh coffee, a full tank, and Midnight Rider playing low on the radio, just humming with the tires and the rumble of the engine. Everything felt fine until I passed a busted-up old sign that read, "Welcome to Lost Knife Pass." I'd driven that way before, but I didn't remember no sign like that. And I sure as hell didn't remember the weird fog that started creeping in soon after. Thick stuff, looked like it was spilling out of the trees like dry ice on a movie set. My headlights barely cut through it, and every now and then I swore I saw shapes moving inside it, figures, tall and thin, just standing there off the shoulder. Thought maybe I was seeing things from being tired, but I still had hours to go and didn't want to stop. That's when the CB started hissing. Not like static, no, this was a different kind of sound. Wet, dripping, almost like someone breathing through gills. Then came a voice, slow and raspy, not coming through any channel I knew. It said, clear as day. "Don't stop driving, Hank. They're waiting." Now I ain't never told no one my name on that trip. I hadn't talked to another soul. In hours. My hands went cold on the wheel and I damn near jackknifed the rig when I looked in the mirror and saw a figure sitting in the sleeper behind me. I spun around, heart thumping, but there wasn't nothing there, just my worn blanket and an empty thermos. Still, the air was cold back there, way too cold, like the heat had been sucked out. I tried to shake it off, blamed it on nerves, but the road just kept getting weirder. The mile marker started repeating. I saw mile 231 3 times. And the trees on the side of the road looked twisted, like they were stretching toward the truck. One of them even looked like it had a face, all bark and knots twisted up, like a scream. I turned the radio up to drown out my thoughts, but all it played was static, until that same voice came back, whispering, "She's in the road, Hank. You can't stop now." Then I saw her. A woman standing dead center in the lane, long black hair hanging in her face, wearing some kind of tattered white dress. I laid on the horn, flashed my lights, but she didn't move an inch. I swerved at the last second, tires screaming as I took the shoulder. When I looked back in the mirror, she was gone, just gone, like she never existed. But the cold? That stayed, like she took part of the warmth with her. I ain't the kind of guy to spook easy. You gotta have guts to haul freight cross-country, alone every week. But something about that night felt wrong, like I'd driven into a place not meant for living folks. I was about to chalk it up to fatigue when I noticed my GPS was glitching. The screen flickered, showed me driving in circles, and then it just went black. The engine stuttered, and for a second, every light in the cab dimmed like the truck was dying. That's when the smell hit, rotten meat and wet leaves, like something dead had been dragged through the woods. And I swear I could hear something breathing just outside my window, slow and deep, like it was waiting for me to stop the truck. But I didn't. I kept going, because something in my gut told me if I stopped I wouldn't be the one telling this story. I didn't stop driving. My knuckles were white on the wheel, and I kept my foot steady on the pedal, even though every part of me was screaming to pull over and catch my breath. The road felt like it was stretching longer than it should, like I was caught in some loop. Every time I thought I recognized a curve or a rock formation, it'd appear again a few minutes later, just slightly different, like the world was copying itself but messing up the details. Then I started seeing roadkill. First, it was just a raccoon, all twisted and flattened. But a mile later there was another, then a deer, then a coyote, then more. Each one was fresher than the last, and none of them looked like they'd been hit by a truck. No blood on the pavement, no skid marks, just the bodies, laid out neat, like someone or something had placed them there on purpose. I rolled my window down a crack, even though the air outside was colder than it had any right to be in. Early fall. I needed to breathe something other than the recycled cab air and whatever scent was clinging to my thoughts. That's when I heard the voices, not through the CB this time, not on the radio, from the trees, low, whispering, voices like a crowd muttering just out of sight. I couldn't make out words, but the tone chilled me worse than the wind ever could. It was like being judged, like something ancient and mean was watching me, deciding if I belonged there or not. And I damn well didn't. I was about to grab my phone and check my route again when my headlights caught something up. Ahead, not a person this time. It was a truck, an old Peterbilt, red with a silver stripe, sitting sideways across the road like it had jackknifed. Its lights were off, no hazards flashing. I slowed down, heart pounding, and rolled to a stop about 20 yards away. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out, boots crunching on the gravel shoulder. I don't know why I got out. I just felt pulled to it, like I owed it to another trucker to check in. But when I got closer, I realized there was no one inside. Doors locked, no skid marks, no sign of a crash. And the kicker? The engine was cold, ice cold, like it hadn't run in days. I circled around the back, and that's when I saw the handprints. Not normal ones. These were long, with too many fingers, streaked in what looked like mud or grease, smeared along the back doors and the side panels. They went up toward the roof. Whatever made them had climbed the damn truck. I took one step back and heard a metallic creak from up top. My light flicked upward, caught nothing but darkness, but I swear I saw movement. Something slipping off the other side and vanishing into the brush. I didn't wait to find out what it was. I hightailed it back to my cab and locked the doors. Started the engine. The dashboard lights flickered again and the stereo hissed before that voice came through a third time. "You shouldn't have stopped, Hank." That was it. I slammed the pedal down and peeled out around that ghost truck like hell itself was nipping at my rear bumper. My trailer fishtailed, gravel sprayed, but I didn't care. I just needed to get out of there. I don't know how long. I drove after that. Could have been 20 minutes, could have been hours. Time stopped making sense. But finally, I saw lights in the distance. Real ones. A gas station off to the side with a couple old pumps and a flickering sign that just said open. I pulled in, heart still pounding, and killed the engine. I sat there a minute, collecting myself, hands trembling like I was coming off a 3-day bender. Then I saw the clerk inside, middle-aged guy with a crooked name tag and tired eyes, staring at me like he'd seen a ghost. I got out, walked in, and before I could even say a word, he said, "You've been driving Lost Knife, haven't you?" My blood ran cold. I nodded, and he just sighed, shaking his head like he'd heard this story 100 times before. He motioned for me to come around the counter, like he didn't want to say what he had to say out loud. I hesitated, but something in his eyes told me he'd seen worse than what I just went through. I walked over, boots squeaking on the stained tile floor, and leaned in close. He lowered his voice to a near whisper and said, "You're lucky you made it here, Hank. Most don't." I didn't ask how he knew my name. I didn't have the stomach for any more surprises just then. Instead, I asked what he meant by most don't. He said drivers who take that stretch of Route 6 at night sometimes don't come back the same, or at all. He said there's a part of the road that ain't right. Folks call it Lost Knife Pass because the ground's soaked in old blood and older curses. Supposedly back in the 1800s, there was some cult out there, doing sacrifices to summon something they couldn't control. When the townsfolk found out, they tried to wipe them out, but the cult went underground, literally, into the caves. into the woods, into whatever cracks in the earth would hide 'em. And now, sometimes they come back. Sometimes their God does too. I laughed. I didn't mean to, but I did. It was nervous, dry, nothing funny about it. The guy didn't laugh. Just kept staring at me, eyes heavy and serious. "You probably saw her, didn't you?" he asked. "The woman in the road?" I nodded slowly. "That's their harbinger," he said. "She ain't real, or maybe she is. Either way, if you see her and stop, they get closer. If you speak to her, they find you. And if you let her in..." He stopped, looked down, rubbed the back of his neck like it pained him just to think about it. "You didn't let her in, did you?" I told him no, but my gut twisted when I remembered the figure I'd seen in my sleeper. He looked at me hard. "If she touched anything in that cab, if she marked it, you need to burn it, toss it out. Leave it here. That truck ain't safe anymore." I stared at him, feeling the weight of the keys in my pocket like they were made of stone. I asked him what happens if I don't. He just said, "Then you better hope you got someone to tell your story when you disappear." I left the gas station with a bottle of water, a pack of smokes, and my thoughts churning like a wasp's nest. I climbed back into my cab and shut the door behind me. Everything looked the same, but something felt off, like the air was thicker, heavier. I turned toward the sleeper, and there it was. The blanket I'd had folded neat on the bed was now unraveled, twisted into the shape of a person laying down. And on the pillow, I swear to God, was a single long black hair. I stared at it, heart jackhammering, then grabbed it with two fingers and flung it out the window like it was poison. I checked the rest of the cab top to bottom, opened every drawer, every cabinet. Nothing. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling I wasn't alone. I drove the rest of the night without music, without CB chatter, just the hum of the tires and the roar of the wind. I passed a sign that said, "Denver, 120 miles, but I could have sworn I'd passed it before. That's when the whispering started again, not from the woods this time, from behind me, from the sleeper, low and breathy. "You didn't stop, Hank, but we're still with you." I didn't dare look back, just kept driving, eyes locked. On the blacktop, waiting for the sun to rise and praying it still would. By the time the sky started bleeding gray over the horizon, I felt like I'd aged 10 years. My eyes were dry and burning, hands stuck to the wheel like they'd fused there overnight. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. Every time I even thought about pulling over to rest, I'd hear that whisper again, low and patient, like it had all the time in the world. "You're almost home, Hank. Just a little further." Only I wasn't heading home. I was heading to Denver. But that voice, it knew me. It knew things it had no business knowing. I reached into my glove box for the little silver flask I keep there, not for drinking, not anymore, but as a kind of talisman. It was my old man's, and he swore it saved his life once when he hit black ice and rolled off a ravine. I don't know why I grabbed it. Maybe to feel something real, something human. But when I opened it, the liquid inside was gone, bone dry, and scratched into the metal at the bottom like it had been etched with a claw, were the words, "She rides with you now." I damn near threw it out the window, but I stuffed it back into the glove box, slammed it shut, and muttered a prayer I hadn't said since I was a kid. I hit the outskirts of Denver just as the sun cracked the horizon, but the relief I expected didn't come. The air still felt wrong, thick, heavy. I dropped the rig off at the depot, signed the manifest with a hand that wouldn't stop shaking, and climbed down to stretch my legs. When I turned to check the trailer, I stopped cold. There were scratches, down the sides, deep, jagged lines that hadn't been there when I picked it up. They weren't from branches or road debris. They were claw marks, long and uneven, some spaced too far apart for any animal I know. Worse still, smeared across the back doors was a bloody handprint, human-shaped, except the fingers were too long, and there were 6 of them. One of the other drivers came over, a guy I've known for years named Benny. He took one look at the rig and said, "Jesus, man. What the hell did you hit out there?" I tried to laugh it off, said something about low-hanging trees, but he just stared at me like he knew I was lying. I didn't want to stick around. I got in my pickup and drove to the motel I usually crash at when I'm between hauls. It was broad daylight now, but everything still felt off, like the world was tilted just a few degrees out of place. I took a long, hot shower and tried to forget the night before, but when I stepped out and wiped the fog off the mirror, I saw her, not behind me, not in the room, in the mirror, standing behind me in the reflection, even though I was alone. Her eyes were black voids, and her mouth was open in a soundless scream. I spun around, slipping on the tile, but there was no one there, just me, shivering, heart pounding like a freight train in my chest. I didn't sleep that night. Or the next. I started hearing whispers even in daylight, seeing shadows move where there weren't none, catching glimpses of that white dress in crowds or reflected in store windows. It was like she'd followed me out of that place. Like she'd hitched a ride in my cab and never got out. I went back to that gas station weeks later, looking for the old clock, but the place was boarded up. Windows smashed, roof caved in, looked like it had been abandoned for years. I asked around at the nearest town, and the folks just gave me strange looks. One woman said, "That place burned down in '98, ain't been open since." I showed her the receipt from the pack of smokes I bought there, and she went pale, said I should leave, said I wasn't supposed to be there, and maybe she was right. Maybe I crossed into some place I wasn't meant to see and brought a piece of it back with me. But I keep driving, gotta make a living, gotta keep moving. Only now I never take Route 6. I don't drive at night if I can help it. And I never ever look in the rearview mirror after midnight. Because sometimes, just sometimes, I still hear her breathing. One night, a few months after all that went down, I was making a delivery out near the Arizona border, heading down a stretch of I-40 that most drivers know to avoid after sunset. There ain't no signs telling you it's cursed or haunted or any of that nonsense, just stories, word of mouth. Whispers passed from one trucker to another like secrets over black coffee and engine grease. I didn't mean to be out there that late, but a blown tire earlier in the day threw me off schedule, and I figured one more nighttime haul wouldn't hurt. I had my high beams on, miles of empty highway ahead, no traffic in either direction. Just me and the open road, the kind of silence that wraps around you like a wet blanket. That's when I saw it again. Not her this time. No white dress, no woman, but something just as bad. There was a shape lying across both lanes, maybe 100 yards out. At first, I thought it was a tarp or some junk that fell off a flatbed. But as I got closer, I realized it was alive. It looked like a deer, or what was left of one, except it was all wrong. Its legs were bent backwards like someone had snapped them the wrong way, and its neck was stretched so long it looked like rubber. I slowed down, confused, trying to figure out what I was seeing, and that's when the thing's head lifted. Not like an animal, not with instinct or fear. It lifted straight up, like it was being pulled by strings, and stared right into my headlights with black, glassy eyes. Then it stood, on two legs, tall and twitching, bones cracking as it straightened up. I slammed on the brakes, tires, screaming, and the whole rig shuddered to a stop. The creature just stood there, tilting its head slowly like it was studying me. Then it turned, took one jerky step into the darkness, and vanished like it was never there. I didn't move for a good 10 minutes. Just sat there, hands tight on the wheel, heart pounding in my ears. I finally eased the truck forward, high, beams sweeping the road. But there was nothing. No body, no tracks, not even blood. Just empty highway. I kept going, faster this time. I figured maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe I was tired. Maybe all the stuff from before had just messed with my head. But about a mile later, I saw another one, this time up on a hill, silhouetted against the moon, just standing there, arms too long, body too thin. And it waved at me, not like a person saying hi. It was slow, deliberate, unnatural, Like it didn't know how humans move and was trying to fake it. I floored it after that. No more brakes, no more second guesses. I pushed that engine harder than I ever had, and every mile I drove, I felt like I was being watched. I could see him now, in the trees, on the side of the road, up on the ridges, not coming for me, just watching, observing, like I was passing through their territory, and they were deciding if they were gonna let me leave. I finally reached the drop-off point just after 3 a.m. The warehouse was lit up and busy, forklifts moving cargo, folks shouting instructions, but it felt like I'd stepped into another world entirely, one where things made sense, where the laws of nature still applied. I handed over the paperwork, got my receipt, and didn't say a word to nobody. On the way back to the cab, I glanced in the side mirror, and there, for a split second, I saw a hand pressing against the inside of the trailer door. Long fingers. Black nails. Then it was gone. I checked the trailer. Empty. Clean. Just like it should have been. But I didn't sleep again that night. I just sat in the cab, engine humming low, lights off, watching the tree line with my headlights off. Because I had a feeling, a sick, twisting hunch in my gut, that whatever I'd passed on that road, I hadn't really passed it. I'd brought something with me, something curious, something patient. The next morning, I pulled into a diner I'd stopped at plenty of times before. Millie's Place, out past Kingman. It's one of those old joints with checkerboard floors, cracked vinyl booths, and waitresses who've seen more roadkill stories than a CB radio on a stormy night. As soon as I walked in, Millie herself looked up from behind the counter, squinted at me like I was a ghost, and said, "You look like hell, Hank." I tried to laugh it off, said I'd had a rough haul, but she wasn't buying it. "You been driving out near Devil's Ridge?" she asked, pouring me a cup of coffee so strong it could melt chrome. I froze mid-step. That's what the locals call that stretch of highway where I'd seen the creature. Devil's Ridge. I didn't even have to answer. Millie nodded slow, slid the coffee across the counter and said, "You need to talk to Roy." I didn't know who Roy was, but at that point I would have talked to a scarecrow if it meant getting answers. She motioned toward the back corner booth, where an old man sat with a notebook and 3 empty coffee cups. He looked like he'd been carved out of desert rock, leathery skin, wild gray beard, hands that had seen decades of dirt and grease. I slid into the booth and said, "Millie told me you might know something about what I saw." Roy didn't look up, just kept scribbling in his notebook, eyes darting around the room like he was counting exits. Finally, he said, "How many did you see?" I told him. "Just a couple. One in the road, one on the ridge. Maybe more watching from the dark." He nodded, like that confirmed something. "They're called the Hollow," he said. "Old as the dirt and twice as mean. Not ghosts, not demons, just wrong. Like someone started building a person and never finished." I felt my throat tighten. He went on, voice low and tired. "They live out there, waiting for folks like us, travelers, drifters, people no one will notice if they vanish. You see 'em once, they might just be passing by. But if you see 'em twice..." He paused, looking me dead in the eye. "Now, they mark you. Not with claws or curses, just with attention. And once they notice you, they follow." My skin went cold. I told him about the handprint in the trailer, the voice on the radio, the feeling that someone was sitting. "In my sleeper when I wasn't looking." Roy nodded again. "They're learning, watching how you move, how you sleep, how you think. They don't kill fast. They become you. Wear your skin like a raincoat and keep driving your route like nothing ever happened." I asked him how to stop it, what to do. He leaned forward and whispered, "Burn the truck." I blinked. "What?" "Burn the damn rig. Tires, seats, every bolt of it. Don't sell it. Don't junk it. Fire's the only thing that confuses them. Might buy you time, might not. But it's better than waiting around while they learn how to be you." I didn't finish my coffee. I thanked him, left a 20 on the table, and got the hell out of there. Drove straight to a buddy of mine's scrapyard in Flagstaff. Told him I had engine trouble and asked if I could torch the whole thing for insurance. He raised an eyebrow but agreed, no questions asked. That night, as the flames reached up into the dark and twisted the steel into molten ruin, I stood there in the cold watching the only truck I ever loved turn to ash. And for a second, just a split second, I thought I saw her again. Not the woman in white, something else. Something that looked like me watching from the shadows at the edge of the scrapyard. Same stance, same hat, same damn eyes. But it didn't blink, didn't breathe, just smiled. I didn't sleep that night. Not that I really planned to. I sat on the edge of the motel bed with my boots still on, room dark except for the dull orange, glow of the fire that still flickered in my mind. That smile, the one I saw at the scrapyard, wearing my face, it wasn't human. It was like someone who'd practiced smiling in a mirror without knowing why people did it. Too wide, too many teeth. It chilled me worse than the cold desert air. I kept thinking about what Roy said, about them things not killing quick, about them becoming. And I started to wonder, what if that wasn't the first time I'd seen it? What if I'd been seeing it all along, just in the wrong places, in mirrors, in windows, in my dreams? I remembered back to a couple months before the first sighting on Devil's Ridge. I'd woken up one night in the sleeper cab of my truck and the air had felt off, heavy, still, like someone was holding their breath in there with me. I'd brushed it off at the time. Maybe a dream, maybe just a trick of the senses. But what if it wasn't? What if that thing had already found me then, and every strange thing since? The voices, the shapes, the nightmares, were just part of it learning. I pulled out my phone and checked the camera roll, scrolling back through highway selfies, diner meals, photos of old rusted rigs and weird roadside attractions. Then I stopped. One photo, taken at dusk outside a truck stop in Utah. I was standing by the truck, thumbs up, grinning. Nothing weird about it until I looked closer, reflected in the chrome of my fuel tank. A figure, tall, lean, its face stretched like wax in the sun. No eyes, no mouth, just a dent where features should be. I dropped the phone. It clattered to the floor, screen still glowing, that photo burning into my brain. That's when the room got cold. Not air conditioner cold, wrong cold. The kind that settles in your bones and makes your breath fog even when it shouldn't. I turned slow, heart hammering, and there it was. Standing in the corner, my height, my build, same jacket, same trucker hat, but it wasn't me. The smile was there again, splitting its face too wide and its head tilted like it was studying me. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. All I could do was stare as it took one step forward, then another, until the room was filled with a high-pitched whine, like a CB radio feedback loop cranked to 11. The lights flickered, my ears rang. Then, just like that, it was gone. No sound, no shape, just silence. I rushed out of that motel, leaving everything behind. I didn't care. I needed to be moving. I needed to put miles between me and whatever that was. I've been driving ever since. Back roads. Daylight hauls only. Never sleeping in the cab. I keep mirrors covered, phones turned off, cameras disabled. I don't listen to the radio much anymore either. 'Cause sometimes late at night, if I'm not careful, I'll hear a voice cut through the static. It sounds like me. Same tone, same drawl. And it says, "Where you going, Hank? We ain't done yet." There was one night not long after I started avoiding highways altogether, when I figured maybe, just maybe, I was getting ahead of it. Took nothing but back roads from Texas up into Oklahoma. The kind of two-lane stretches where the only traffic is deer and the occasional mailbox on a bent steel pole. I was hauling an empty flatbed, no destination, just riding out the paranoia and trying to outrun a shadow. Somewhere past midnight, the GPS started flickering. I hadn't used it in weeks, but the screen lit up by itself. I glanced over and saw the map redrawn, rerouted, and then the display said, "Recalculating home." That word chilled me. Not a street name, not coordinates, just home. I never told the thing where I lived. Hell, I'd slept in more cabs than houses over the years. I tried to shut it off. No dice. It stayed on, humming low like it was leading me somewhere it knew I'd eventually have to go. And damn me, I followed. The road twisted through. Hills and fog rolled in, thick as soup. The headlights cut through it just barely, and every so often I'd catch glimpses of figures out of the corner of my eye, standing between the trees, leaning against fence posts, crouched on mile markers. Never moving, never chasing, just watching, like scarecrows carved out of flesh and wire. I cranked the windows up, locked the doors, and gripped the wheel tight enough to make my knuckles pop. But the weirdest thing? My fuel gauge stopped, dropping. It just sat on half full, no matter how long I drove. And the clock? It blinked 3:33 over and over, like time itself had looped. After a while, I started noticing signs, old, rusted ones that didn't match any route I knew. One said, "Welcome back." Another said, "Dead end, keep going." Then came a billboard, lit up like it shouldn't have been, saying, in plain white letters, "We're waiting, Hank." I slammed the brakes and pulled off into a gravel turnout. Enough was enough. I killed the engine, heart thundering. The air outside was dead quiet, not even crickets. I climbed out, feet crunching on gravel, and looked around. Moon high, fog thick. Then I heard it. Footsteps, not running. Just one slow, deliberate step. Then another, coming from behind the trailer. I circled around, flashlight in. Hand, breath short. Nothing. But the trailer? It had fresh handprints all over the sides, dozens of them, all the same size. All smudged like they'd come from someone pressing against the metal in a panic, trying to get out, not in. I jumped back in the cab, locked the doors, and peeled out of there, tires kicking up dust and gravel. I didn't stop until I hit a diner at dawn with other trucks parked outside. Even then, I didn't sleep. Just sat in the corner with cold coffee and watched the door. 'Cause now I wasn't just scared they were following me. I was scared they might have already been me. And the next time I caught my reflection in the diner window, I swear, my face smiled before I did. I left that diner as soon as the sun fully broke over the horizon. But something didn't feel right. Not with the daylight, not with the truck, not even with the coffee that still clung to the back of my throat like it had been brewed with ash and regret. Every sound seemed off. The engine didn't purr like it used to. It growled low and throaty like a caged animal. The mirrors kept showing flickers of movement that weren't there when I turned around. I caught my own reflection staring just a second too long, blinking just a beat too late. It felt like the truck wasn't just hauling me anymore. Was hauling it. Whatever it was. And it was growing more curious by the mile. I made it halfway into Kansas by dusk, sticking to back roads and avoiding way stations, rest stops, and anywhere I might be tempted to close my eyes. But the need for rest eventually wins. Body ain't a machine. So I pulled off onto an old farm access road and backed the rig into a patch of dirt surrounded by cornstalks taller than me. Seemed quiet, seemed safe. I should have known better. I climbed into the sleeper cab and locked everything down. No radio, no GPS. I covered every mirror and closed every curtain. Just me, the hum of the engine idling to keep the heat running, and a revolver under my pillow. At first the night was calm. Eerily calm. Not a breeze stirred the corn. Not a cricket dared chirp. But then I started hearing this low knocking. Sound. Soft. Rhythmic. Like someone tapping a single fingernail against the side of the cab. I stayed still. Listened. Knock. 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 Always in sets of 3. Then silence. Then it'd start again, this time on the other side of the cab. It moved, but never fast, like it was walking around me, circling, studying, My pulse was thumping so hard I could feel it in my teeth. I reached for the revolver with one hand, kept the other gripping the blanket like a child who thinks, the covers'll keep the monsters out. Then the knocking stopped, and the whispering started. It came from inside, right behind me. A voice, low and raspy, like a vinyl record that had been left in the sun too long. It said, "You sleepin', Hank?" I spun around, gun raised, heart slamming against my ribs like it was trying to break free. But there was no one there, just the small, cramped sleeper cab and a cold draft blowing in from under the bunk. That's when I saw the floor vent. It was open. I never opened it, never even noticed it had a latch. And below, in the darkness, two pale hands gripped the edges of the vent. Slow and deliberate, a head started to rise, eyes pitch black, skin the color of old wax. My face, but not mine. Its mouth stretched open, too wide, and it hissed, "Move over!" I emptied the revolver into the vent, every shot deafening. In the tight space. Screaming, cussing, fumbling to start the truck. I peeled out of that field so fast, I tore down cornstalks by the dozen. Didn't look back. Wouldn't. 'Cause deep down, I knew. I hadn't stopped it. I'd only made it angry. I drove for damn near 10 hours straight after that. Didn't even stop to piss. My hands were shaking, jaw clenched so tight it felt like my teeth might crack. Every mile marker I passed felt like I was counting down to something. Like I was being herded instead of driving free. That vent, it still haunts me. I patched it up the next day with duct tape and a steel plate I bought from a scrapyard. Drilled it in myself, but even now, sometimes I swear I hear breathing coming from beneath it. Slow, measured, patient. A week later, I got a dispatch. Called to haul livestock from a small farm just outside Louisiana. Now normally I'd pass on something like that. I'd been trying to stick to normal freight, the kind that don't groan or move or look you in the eyes. But the pay was double, and I figured maybe a load of noisy animals would drown out the silence in my cab. Mistake. Big one. The farmer met me at dusk, skin leathery and pale, eyes like he hadn't blinked since the 80s. Said the livestock were in the barn, already loaded in a special trailer he wanted me to use. When I asked what kind of livestock I'd be hauling, he didn't answer, just said, "They're quiet travelers, but they don't like bright lights. Keep the trailer sealed. Don't stop for no one." I asked again what I was hauling. He just smiled and said, "They'll ride with you, not behind you." I should have walked away right then, but my damn pride and a half-empty wallet kept my feet planted. I backed up, hitched the trailer, and rolled out into the night. Almost instantly, the cab got cold again. Not chilly, freezing. Like the kind of cold that makes your joints ache and your lungs burn. I cranked the heater, but it didn't help. The mirrors started fogging up from the inside. I wiped one clean just enough to see my own reflection. Or so I thought. But this one didn't move with me. It just stared. Then it smiled, slow and deliberate, and pointed. Behind me. I turned so fast I nearly snapped my neck, and I swear to God, something was back there. In the sleeper. Crouched low. Its eyes, reflecting like an animal's, but its shape, it was wrong. Too long in the arms, too thin in the neck, like someone had built a person from memory, but forgot how bones work. It didn't speak, just opened its mouth and let out this clicking sound, sharp like teeth snapping together in rapid fire. I slammed the brakes, the truck fishtailed, horn blasting, wheels screaming. I flung open the door and jumped out onto the asphalt, rolling into a ditch. Came up with cuts on my arms and blood on my shirt, but I was alive. The cab light turned on its own. And in that glow, I saw 4 or 5 more shapes crawling down from the ceiling like damn spiders, moving in unnatural jerks. They were inside my truck. I ran until my legs gave out. Passed out under a billboard that said, "Fresh starts ahead," with peeling paint and bullet holes through the word, "fresh." When I came to, the truck was gone. Not just stolen, gone. No skid marks, no tracks, no trailer. Like it had never been there. But I know better. It's still out there, driving itself maybe, hauling whatever the hell those things were. Sometimes I think I hear it passing in the distance on some dark road. Sometimes I see headlights where there ain't no road at all. And sometimes, late at night, I get dispatch calls from numbers I don't recognize. The voice on the other end always says the same thing in that slow, scratchy tone. Load ready. You coming, Hank? Look, I've been driving trucks for over 20 years now. Seen things most folks wouldn't believe if I told them. But nothing prepared me for the night I got the call from that voice. It was just past midnight, the kind of quiet that seeps into your bones and makes your skin crawl. My phone buzzed on the dashboard, a number I didn't recognize flashing on the screen. I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. I answered, and that same raspy voice whispered, "Load ready. You comin', Hank?" My gut twisted. I tried to hang up, but the line stayed open. Static crackled, and I swear I could hear faint whispers behind that voice. Voices I recognized. Old friends I'd lost on the road. Voices long gone, but not forgotten. I sat frozen in the driver's seat, the engine ticking as it cooled. The voice repeated, more insistent now. "We need you. The highway's callin', Hank." That word, callin', felt like a chain wrapped around my heart. I wanted to say no, to shut it all down and walk away, but the road had always been a part of me. Maybe too deep in my blood to escape. I grabbed my keys, started the engine, and pulled out of the parking lot into a night swallowed by fog so thick it felt like I was driving through a cloud. The road ahead was empty, but the air inside the cab grew heavier with every mile. My headlights flickered, and the radio crackled to life, playing a low hum that sounded like a distant choir singing in a language I didn't know. Shadows danced just beyond the edges of the light, shapes shifting in the mist. I kept glancing to the mirrors, half expecting to see that twisted grin watching me. But they were empty. For now. Hours passed. The fog thickened, wrapping around, the truck like a shroud. Suddenly, the GPS blinked on by itself, showing a route I'd never driven before. A narrow, winding road that sliced through a forest so dense it looked like a wall of black glass. I hesitated, but the voice whispered again through the radio, soft but firm. "This is the way, Hank. Trust the road." I took the turn, and the world changed. Trees leaned closer, their branches like fingers reaching out to scrape the paint. The fog seemed alive, curling and twisting like smoke, and every so often I caught glimpses of eyes, dozens of them, reflecting back at me from the darkness. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A figure standing by the side of the road, tall and thin, wearing a weathered trucker's hat and coat. Its face was obscured, but I knew that smile. I slammed on the brakes, but the truck didn't slow. The road stretched out endlessly ahead, a ribbon of nightmare with no end. The figure stepped forward, merging with the fog, its voice echoing inside my head. "Welcome back, Hank. We've been waitin'." The cab grew colder, breath freezing, on the glass. The radio burst into static, then silence. The engine stalled. I was alone, or so I thought. And that's where the road took me, into a place between worlds, where the highway never ends, and the stories don't stop. I'm still driving, friends, still hauling freight for a load that never arrives. And if you ever see a rig with headlights in the fog driving a road that doesn't exist on any map, well, that might just be me. So next time you're out on the highway, keep your eyes open. The road has stories, and some of them are true. Real true. There was this one stretch of highway that had always given me the creeps, even before things started getting weird. It was called Devil's Curve by the locals, a tight bend in the road where more than a few rigs had gone off the edge, disappearing into the thick woods below. Nobody talked much about it, but the stories traveled fast. Trucks found abandoned. Drivers gone without a trace. Strange lights flickering in the treetops. I never wanted to drive that route. But one night the dispatcher sent me there with a load that had a tight deadline. I didn't have much choice. As I approached Devil's Curve, the night was unusually still. The moon was a sickly yellow, casting long shadows across the pavement. I slowed the rig down, eyes peeled for anything out of the ordinary. Just as I was about to hit the bend, my headlights caught something on the shoulder, a figure standing perfectly still, watching me. It was a man, dressed like a trucker from decades ago, with a faded hat pulled low over his eyes. He didn't move as I passed, but I could feel his gaze burning through the glass. That's when the radio cut out, and the engine started sputtering. The rig slowed to a crawl on its own, and the dashboard lights flickered like a faulty neon sign. I tried to shift gears, hit the horn, anything to get control, but the truck wasn't listening. Then, through the static of the radio, a voice came through, soft but unmistakable. "Turn back, Hank. The curve takes what it wants." Panic hit me like a freight train. I jammed my foot on the gas, but the rig didn't respond. I braced for the crash I was sure was coming. Instead, the truck stopped dead right at the edge of the bend. Outside, the figure was closer now, standing beside the cab with a crooked smile that sent chills down my spine. He lifted a hand, and the air turned ice cold, frost forming on the windows. I swear I saw dozens of eyes peeking out from the trees, watching, waiting. The radio crackled again. "You can't outrun us, Hank. The road remembers." Then the lights went out, and everything went black. When I woke up, it was dawn. The truck was parked miles from the curve, engine cold, no sign of the figure or the eyes. The load was still secured, no damage to the rig, but I knew something had changed. The road had marked me, and every time I drive near Devil's Curve now, I hear that voice whispering in the static, reminding me, some places on the highway aren't meant for the living. There was this one time I pulled into a rest stop just outside of New Mexico, a place called Dust Hollow. The kind of spot that looks innocent enough in the daylight. Concrete pads, a handful of picnic tables, a flickering neon sign buzzing overhead. But when the sun dips and shadows stretch long, Dust Hollow feels like the edge of the world, the kind of place where time forgets to keep moving forward. I was dead tired, my eyes stinging from too many miles on the road, and figured a quick break would do me good. I parked the rig, grabbed my thermos, and settled in for a smoke on one of the picnic benches. Just as I lit up, I noticed this old man sitting across from me, hunched over like he was carrying a lifetime of secrets in his shoulders. He didn't say a word, just stared out at the highway with eyes that shone too bright for his weathered face. I nodded and tried to start a conversation. "Long night out here, huh?" No response, just that steady stare. Then, out of nowhere, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, battered harmonica. He raised it to his lips and played a slow, haunting melody that sent a shiver down my spine. It wasn't just the song. It was the way the notes seemed to twist and curl around the night air, wrapping the whole rest stop in a fog of memory and regret. The lights flickered, and I swear for a second the air smelled like burnt rubber mixed with something ancient, like the smell of a long-forgotten highway. That's when I saw them. Figures moving just beyond the edge of the parking lot, shadows that didn't belong to any person. They slid through the darkness, slow and deliberate, never quite stepping into the light. My skin prickled, every hair on my arm standing on end. I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination, that the night was playing tricks. But the old man kept playing, and the shadows kept moving, closer now, circling like predators. I wanted to leave. Hell, I needed to leave. But my feet felt glued to the ground and the truck seemed miles away. The music swelled, and the rest stop vanished. Around me, replaced by a cold, endless road lined with twisted trees that whispered in voices only the dead could understand. The old man's eyes met mine and he smiled, a smile that cracked like dried earth. "Welcome to Dust Hollow, friend," he said. "You don't leave until the song ends." I don't remember how I got back to my truck. One moment I was frozen in place, and the next I was slamming the door, starting the engine, and hauling ass out of there with the harmonica's tune still ringing in my ears. Ever since that night, every time I hear a harmonica wail on the wind, my heart skips a beat, and I wonder if Dust Hollow is still waiting, singing its song, ready to trap the next lost soul who thinks they can just pull over for a smoke. One of the freakiest nights I ever had happened on a stretch of highway called the Whispering Pines, named for the dense forest that lined both sides of the road and the eerie sounds the wind made through the branches. It was late fall, the Oi, kind of night when the chill settles deep and the moon hides behind thick clouds. I was hauling a load of refrigerated goods, keeping an eye on the gauges and the dark road ahead. Suddenly, my radio crackled, and a voice I didn't recognize came through, low and urgent. "Turn off the headlights," it said, "or they'll see you." I blinked, thinking it was a prank or some interference, but the voice was steady, not joking. I slowed the rig, looked around, but saw nothing. Still, the words stuck with me. I decided to humor the warning, so I flicked off the headlights and coasted in the dark, the only light coming from the dashboard and the stars overhead. That's when the whispering started. Soft at first, like the wind rustling leaves, but soon it grew louder, like voices carried on the breeze, speaking in a language I couldn't understand. I felt eyes on me, dozens, maybe hundreds, watching from the shadows. My breath came quick, and my hands gripped the wheel tight. Then out of nowhere, headlights appeared behind me, too many to count, closing in fast. I tried to speed up, but the engine hesitated, like it was stuck in molasses. The voices turned into laughter, echoing around me, and the road seemed to stretch longer with every mile. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the middle of the road, a woman in white, her face pale and eyes black as coal. She raised a hand, and the headlights behind me blinked out all at once. The cab plunged into darkness. My heart hammered so loud I thought it might burst. The voice on the radio whispered again, "Don't look back, Hank." I kept my eyes fixed on the road ahead, but the woman's image burned in my mind. When the fog finally lifted and I reached the next town, my engine roared back to life. Headlights blazed on, and the radio fell silent. I looked in the mirrors. No cars behind me, no sign of the woman or the voices. But the Whispering Pines had gotten into my bones. To this day, when the wind howls through the trees, I swear I hear those whispers calling my name, reminding me to keep my eyes forward and never turn back.